Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Chov Daled Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. The Gemara on Daf Chov Aleph Amud Beis explained the reason why the Chacham were Koveya Chanukah on what nace. The Gemara explains over there because after all, the Yevonim came and tried to defile all of the oils in the Beis Hamikdash, and only one was found that was not defiled. They lit that oil, and it lasted not just for 1 day, but for 8 days. Subsequently, the year after, Chazal were already mesakin kavum va'asum yamim tovim kahalil v'hoidah. The celebration of Chanukah is with Halil and Hoidah. And therefore Hoidah certainly refers to the Hoidah in the Tefillah of Al Hanisim. What about Hoidah Al Hanisim in Birkas HaMazon? That's what the Gemara now asks. Iboy lahu mahu lahazkir shel Chanukah beBirkas HaMazon. What is the din in regards to mentioning Al Hanisim on Chanukah in the Birkas HaMazon? Kivan midrabanan hu loy madcherinon. One side is to say, since Al Hanisim is only midrabanan, Chanukah is only midrabanan, therefore we do not mention it. Or dilma mishum pirsume nisa madcherinon. Or maybe because, after all, mentioning Al Hanisim is a way of being mefarsem, advertising the miracle, therefore we would say it. Amarav Sechara, Amarav Huna, Eino Mazkir. He says you don't have to mention it. V'im bo lahazkir, mazkir bohida. But if you do say Al Hanisim, it won't be a hefsek, and you shall then put it in the hoidah, because after all, the Al Hanisim is a hoidah on the ovar, what took place during Chanukah. Rav Huna bar Yehuda ikloi lebeirove, sover la'adkuri boine Yerushalayim. He came to visit Rava, and he thought to then machnis the Al Hanisim during Chanukah in the bracha of Bonei Yerushalayim in Birkas HaMazon. Omar Lohu Rav Sheshes. Here the Mefarshim explained it really should be read Rava. Omar Lohu Rava kitfila, just like in tefillah. Ma tefillah behoidah, af Birkas HaMazon behoidah. Just like in tefillah, when we insert the Al Hanisim, it's in the bracha of hoidah in the moedim. So too, when we insert the Al Hanisim in Birkas HaMazon, it's in the bracha of noideh lecha. Now the Gemara asks, in regards to other insertions, Iboy lahu, Mao lahazkir Rosh Chodesh bebirkas hamazon. Do we mention the Rosh Chodesh of Ya'aleh v'Yavoy in the Birkas HaMazon? Again, in Tefillah we certainly mention it. But what about in regards to Birkas HaMazon? Im timtzu loymar bechanukah dirabanon loy tzorich Rosh Chodesh deraiset tzorich. On the one hand, if you want to say that the reason why we don't mention it in Chanukah is it's only midirabanan, but Rosh Chodesh is derais, and therefore we should mention it. Or dilma kiven deloy osir ba'asiyas malacha loy mazkerinon. Or maybe on the other hand, because Rosh Chodesh is not osir b'malacha, therefore it doesn't have the same chashivus that we should mention Ya'aleh v'Yavoy. So Rav Omar Mazkir, Rav is of the opinion that we do mention Ya'aleh v'Yavoy on Rosh Chodesh in the Birkas HaMazon, in addition, of course, to the Tefillah. Rabbi Chanina Amar Einoi Mazkir. Rabbi Chanina argues and says we don't mention the Ya'aleh v'Yavoy in the Birkas HaMazon, only in the Tefillah. Omar Rav Zrika Nakut de Rav biyadcha. He says, take that opinion of Rav who says that we do mention Ya'aleh v'Yavoy on Rosh Chodesh in the Birkas HaMazon, and take that in your hand. Dekoi Rabbi Oshaya kavaseh, because Rabbi Oshaya went like him. The Tani Rabbi Oshaya, Yamim sheyesh behen karban Pesach, those days they have a karban Pesach, Kigon Rosh Chodesh v'Chodesh Shel Moed, Arvis v'Shacharis u'Mincha mispala shmona esrei. In the tefillos of those days, you mention the Ya'aleh v'Yavoy in the avoida of the Shmona Esrei. V'im loy omar machzirin oisoi. And if you do not say them, then you must go back. Now, by the way, that's true with all days, all tefillos of Chol HaMoed, and that's true with Rosh Chodesh in Shacharis and in Mincha. However, we learned in Brachos, Daf Lamed Amud Beis, that over there, when it comes to saying Rosh Chodesh at night, if a person does not mention it, he does not go back. There, because we're not Kaddish the Chodesh rather, at night. So therefore that would be an exception. But otherwise, Machzirin, if we don't mention Ya'aleh V'Yovoy. Ve'ein behen Kiddush ala kois. We don't make Kiddush on the kois, not on Rosh Chodesh and not on Chol HaMoed. V'yesh behen hazkaras v'birkas hamazon. And we do mention, as we mentioned before in the opinion of Rav, that this is indeed true here as well, that we do mention the Ya'aleh V'Yovoy in the Birkas Hamazon of Rosh Chodesh and of Chol HaMoed. Yomim, he goes on to say, she'ein bohen karben musaf. Those days do not have a karben musaf. Kegon, Sheni, V'chamishi, V'tanios, U'ma'modos. The Brisa says, on Monday and Thursday, on Tinius and Ma'modos. Now interjects the Gemara, Sheni v'chamishi, maya b'ritayhu. What does Monday and Thursday have to do with anything? What's unique about those days? Elo sheni v'chamishi v'sheni shel tainios u'mamodos. Rather, you have to read it to mean that it's sheni v'chamishi v'sheni in regards to tainis and maimodos. That means that when they would enact certain fasts, when there was a drought, like it's Mavur Masechet Tainis, that they would require the public to fast on Monday, Thursday, and Monday. That's what it's referring to when it says Sheni Chamishi over here in this Brisa. Maimodos were those 24 groups that were in place of Klal Yisrael, who were needed to be in front of the carbon, since Klal Yisrael can't be in front of the carbon Sibur. And therefore, in order to enable then, as a shaliach for Klal Yisrael to be present at the carbon, they would make 24 groups of Yerei Shomayim, and they would travel to the Beis Hamikdash, and they would then be present at the time of the Karbanos. There would also be those that were in those groups that did not travel, and they would fast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday throughout that week. And therefore, they were called the Ma'amodes. Would also read certain parshios in the Torah. So those days we're talking about Arvis v'Shacharis u'Mincha mispala Shmona Esrei. In all the tefillos we daven Shmona Esrei. V'oimer me'ein ha'me'ora b'shomei tefillah. And we mention a special aneinu tefillah we insert it in the brach of Shomei tefillah. V'im loy omar ein machzirin osoi. However, if we did not mention the aneinu in these tefillos, then we don't require the person to go back. Ve'ein behen azkaras b'birkas hamazon, and we don't mention the Ya'aleh V'Yovoy. Not Ya'aleh, we don't mention rather these special days in Birkas Hamazon. Says the Gemara, Iboilu, the Gemara has another question. Mahu lahazkir shel Chanukah b'musafim. Now, Chanukah, of course, is 8 days, and therefore in every Chanukah there's going to be Shabbos, which has Musaf. But not only that, since Chanukah begins Chof Hei Kislev, goes from then to 8 days, there's always going to be a Rosh Chodesh Teves inside of Chanukah as well, which we daven Musaf on Rosh Chodesh. So the Gemara asks, do we mention Al Hanisim in those tefillos of Musafim both on Shabbos and on Rosh Chodesh? What's the tzdadim? Kivan the lesbe musaf b'didei lo midachrinon. On the one hand, since we don't have musaf on those days of Chanukah, that means that Chanukah itself doesn't have a musaf, therefore we do not mention it because it's not unique to the Chanukah. Or perhaps since the day itself in all of the other tefillos we mentioned the Al Hanisim, so too when it comes to then the Musaf we will also require Al Hanisim. So Rav Huna of Rav Yehuda the Amrei Travayu Eino Mazkir. Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda said both that we do not mention the Al Hanisim in the Musaf of Shabbos and the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan, the Amrei Travayu Mazkir. Rav Nachman and Rabbi Yochanan are of the opinion that you do mention the Al Hanisim in the Musaf of both Rosh Chodesh and of Shabbos. Omar Abaye, the Rav Yosef, Ho de Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, the Ravu. That opinion of Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda that said you do not mention it, that goes together with what Rav said. What did Rav say? Do Amar Rav, Gido Amar Rav. Rosh Chodesh shechal liyos b'Shabbos. When Rosh Chodesh comes out to be on Shabbos, the maftir b'novi b'Shabbos. Eino tzorich lahazkir shel Rosh Chodesh. When you make haftarah on Shabbos, you don't have to mention in the bracha about Rosh Chodesh, only about Shabbos. Why? Shilmolei Shabbos a navi b'Rosh Chodesh. Because if it wasn't for Shabbos, we would not read the haftarah on Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, you don't have to mention, says Rav, the Rosh Chodesh when you mention the bracha during the birkas of the haftarah. Midami, the Gemara rejects this. Is it similar? Hasam over there, it's different because Navi b'di Rosh Chodesh leka klal. There's no such thing as reading the haftarah on Rosh Chodesh. Therefore, you don't have to mention it. But over here, isei ba'arvis v'shachris u'mincha. But over here, in regards to Shabbos or Rosh Chodesh, you do have the other tefillos of Shachris, Mincha, and Marav that you do mention the Al Hanisim. You want to make a comparison, then it's for the following comparison that Rav said. Do Amar Rav achad vui Amar Rav. He said in the name of Rav, Ramasna Amar Rav, Yoim Tov shechal liyos b'Shabbos. When Yom Tov comes out to be on Shabbos, Hamaftir b'Navi b'Mincha b'Shabbos. They used to read the haftarah on Mincha of Shabbos. So when they would read that Mincha, that haftarah and Mincha of Shabbos, when it was indeed Yom Tov as well, Ein tzorich lahazkir shel Yom Tov. So Rav says you don't have to mention the Yom Tov in the bracha of the haftarah. Why? She'ilmolei Shabbos a Navi b'Mincha b'Yom Tov. Because if it was not for Shabbos, we would not read the haftarah on Yom Tif, and therefore there's no need to mention Yom Tif at the brach of the haftarah. So you see over here as well, when it comes to then the question that we had before, in regards to mentioning the Musaf, do we say Ala Nisim on Chanukah either on Shabbos when there's Musaf or on Rosh Chodesh when there's Musaf? So then here too we can see that since indeed these are days that do not have shaykhis to the Musaf. Chanukah does not have any particular shaykhis to the Musaf. The only reason why you're mentioning Musaf is because the day of Rosh Chodesh and the day of Shabbos, therefore, according to this opinion, you would not need to then mention the Al Hanisim on Musaf.